Hey, brothers and sisters, 1 second. Yeah, it's clear. Look, I want to talk to you guys about prophecy. You know, the Word of God tells us in Joel chapter 2 that in the last days the Lord would pour out His Spirit upon all flesh. And the old men would have dreams, and the young men would see visions. Come on, Riley. And, there's a lot of people that my ministry really started in 2011. Before that, I was like your normal Christian person, and I didn't really think about, what Jesus said for us to do about if your brother needs a shirt and you have two, give him one. So, he talked about love and the most important things that are in the scriptures, in John. John is really the book that I look to the most, because in the book of John is the one that laid his head on Jesus's chest, and he says, I am the one that wrote this book. So we know that there's a lot of older copies of this. I mean, within years of the death of Christ, there are copies of the Gospel of John. And so I really look to that one as to one being perfect. And then we know, of course, that John wrote the book of the Revelation. What I want to talk to you guys about is, back in, I believe it was 2012 or 2013, I was looking for this on my channel, and I kind of got sidetracked, but I wanted to talk to you guys about this because I've been watching Fox News, and they're talking about these hostages. And now this little baby that's 10 months old has been transferred, and his brother have been transferred to another set of terrorists. You see, they're spreading these people out because the whole thing is they want to maintain their control over Gaza. And I want to talk to you guys about, this Bible prophecy thing. When I first started, there were so many people talking about all these things that they believed that God was showing them because they were having dreams. And a lot of people had rapture dreams. In fact, I tried to talk to this pastor, local pastor, and he laughed at me, because I said, I'd had a rapture dream. He said, well, when did you have this rapture dream? And I said, well, like 9 years ago. He laughs at me. This is what usually happens. People, about every 10, 15 years, people have rapture dreams, and then they think the Lord is coming, and really the dreams are from God, but they're just trying to get people excited, so that they would actually serve the Lord. And he says it doesn't mean that the Lord is coming. We know He's coming, but we don't know exactly when He's coming. And so he had this whole idea about, he believed that God would do this every few years just to stimulate the body of Christ. And it's kind of like calling the Lord a liar, by saying, well, He's not coming soon. He didn't really mean what He said, kind of thing. I found that to be very disheartening to hear him say that. And so, and then I heard Perry Stone the other day talking about all these people on YouTube and prophecies and how he, was against a lot of that. But you know what? And then he began to tell about how he'd had this dream about the Twin Towers, and he'd saw like glass blown out of the buildings and things. You can go watch his video, and then if you want the whole story, you got to give him $69 to hear it all, or buy his book. And then he'll tell you more about all of his prophecies, that he had, that the Lord gave him. And the Lord said, here, I want you to sell these for some nickels so you can do some other stuff. But that's just frustrating to me. When you have a minister that says, God gave me a message, and I'm going to tell you half of it, but you got to give me $65 to hear the other half. I can remember several times in the Gospels whenever the apostles did that, or Jesus did that, or John did that, or Isaiah did that, or Zechariah did that, or Joel did that, or Hezekiah did that, or Samson did that. Well, no, none of those people ever did that. That is what is frustrating, because it gives all Christians a bad name. When you're trying to talk about the Lord, why do you have to sell a book? Look, you can say, send me any gift of any size to cover my costs. No, that's not what's said. It's you got to give me $65 or $69 or $59 or $159 to get the whole series, They're releasing 12 hostages today. The United States been attacked about 72 or 73 times now in this. And Joe Biden's blown up, in the middle of the desert. There was a tent. There was a fly that had landed on a camel's eye, and it buzzed off, and they shot it down with a laser beam. And that took care of those guys. I showed those Iranians, those rascally Iranians, I showed them. And I shot that fly that was on them, and that tells them that I could actually do worse. It's a joke. I remember when Gaddafi drew his line in the sand, his red line in the sand, right? And then he messed around with Ronald Reagan. And he drew his red line in the sand some more and said, cross that line. And you know what? Ronald Reagan dropped some bombs on him personally, on his tents, and got like 7 of his family members. And you know what? There was no more lines in the sand. He didn't threaten anymore. His stuff all calmed down. Remember when the Iranians were doing all that crazy stuff and Donald Trump was president, and somebody talked Donald into actually killing somebody, and he killed Soleimani, and then that all stopped for a while? And Biden, he gives those Iranians $16 billion. Well, he didn't give it to them. He just unfroze their assets and this and that. So then now they have $16 billion. And when he gave them that other money, all of a sudden we have this attack against Israel. And the Iranians had all this money to buy these paragliders and train these terrorists. They trained the terrorists in their terror camps with those paragliders to fly in there. There were written books on how to rape these women and what to do and what to say to them in Hebrew about taking their clothing off. All this horrific stuff. It was 100% Iran. They just hired these guys. It'd be like me if I decided I wanted to kill somebody and I hired a hitman to go kill them. I did it. The hitman pulled the bullet, but they pulled the trigger, but I'm the one that initiated the whole thing, and Iran initiated this whole thing. And somebody needs to man up. And I know, I'm sorry that Rosalind Carter died. I didn't really like her husband, Jimmy. I lived during that time. Interest rates for houses were almost 11%. We got a 10 3/4, and they're like, that is outrageous for you to be able to get a 10 3/4 interest rate on a $70,000 loan. My car was costing me 19 or 20% under Jimmy Carter. And he wanted to blame the guy before him. And he had 4 years and he didn't lower it at all. As soon as Ronald Reagan became president and he began to do things, the interest rate dropped down to 6%. Wow, 4%, 4 3/4% off of that. That made a big deal in my payment. And then my car, the interest rate I could refinance it went way down. This stuff they call democracy doesn't work. We are a constitutional republic. We vote for representatives. They go there and they act for us. It's not a democracy. They just want to keep spinning the Constitution the way they want it to be. And it's very frustrating to people my age, because I'm 65 now. I lived through all this stuff. I could buy 2 weeks worth of groceries for about $60 or $50 back then. I made $3 or $4 an hour. I could have a brand new car. I could have an apartment to live in. I could have groceries. I could get TV, everything. Now, you can't live on $4,000 a month. You're like struggling. What? Where does my money go? You're spending $700-800 for food. If you want to eat any meat, and you have to have meat protein in your body because your body needs that to break down, which turns into hormones and things like that make your body function properly. If you eat a bunch of vegetables, it just doesn't work because we're living in a cursed body. You see, in the beginning when Adam and Eve were there, they ate fruit. That's all they ate. But then Adam and Eve sinned against God, and then they had to start eating meat, and that's when the curse was on us. And so our bodies changed, just like Adam lived to be 960 years, I believe. And then God decided, hey, your years are going to be 120. And then he dropped it down to 70, which is 70. So, and what happens to you, people don't tell you this about aging, but your body every night when you go to sleep produces insulin. The insulin breaks down your muscles, and then your HGH and your cells have telomeres, and then you have DNA that tells it how to make things replicate. Well, the copy is bad on your telomeres and the other things, so your body doesn't rebuild. And you have very low HGH levels, so like you'll have muscles all over your whole body that you never knew that you had that begin to hurt or ache. So that's why King David, and even if you look at, they talk about Jimmy Carter and how he's so frail and he's shriveled up to nothing. And I was looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he had a good friend that was a lifting buddy of his who also won a championship. This guy was very muscular. He wasn't tall, though. That was his issue. He was about 5'8", 5'9". So he was big and muscular, and he won these contests, but Arnold Schwarzenegger is like 6'2" or 3". You know, so they want these bigger men. But he shriveled up. You would have never known this man had ever lifted weights in his life when he died. It's been all those years and it just goes away. The flesh doesn't last. So anyway, I'm sorry. I got on a rant. I'm losing it. But here's the thing. You know, God has showed me so many things over time. And I made videos about these. And so that proves that God is real. My whole point of this is that so people can know that Almighty God is real, that He knows the future. He knows everything that's going to happen, right? He knew this was going to happen. He knew that COVID was going to happen. Not one single one of these prophets in the world said, hey, you know what? There's going to be this thing called COVID-19, and it's going to take over the world for a year and a half. Donald Trump's going to lose his presidency over it. No, none of them. In fact, they all said Donald Trump was going to be president. Again, he's going to get a second term. When the Lord had shown me he would not get a second term, that they were selling his memorabilia. I made a video about all this, and then I kept saying that, and people kept telling me, you're crazy, brother. Because see, there's other prophets, Kat Kerr and all the other ones, Hank Kuhneman and just there's like 6 or 7 of them were all saying this. Kim Clement, all these people, he's dead now, but they were all saying that Donald Trump would get 2 terms, and they were saying it's back to back, and I was saying no. The Lord showed me that he was gonna be in there 1 term, and that was gonna be it. And they were gonna sell his memorabilia, and it was gonna be like, you know, to the world. It looked like he was Benedict Arnold or whatever. And then what happened? We had the January 6th thing happen, and the whole world still talking about that, even though it's not actually true, as far as the way the story was told to everyone. So, you know, they did go in there. They shouldn't have. Donald Trump should have restrained them, I think. It was stupid. He really helped incite them a little bit by his rhetoric. You know, he's flamboyant. But here's what I'm talking about. So I saw a terrorist. God gave me the terrorist name who would go in and kill these people down in San Bernardino. The very name, Saeed, and I put the name out there before he did it. 15 or 16 days before he did it, the very name of the guy. And then the Lord had showed me, this is what I want to talk to you about. Look at what's happening in Israel. And I believe the Lord showed me this before it was going to happen, but I didn't understand it. That's the problem with God showing you things, you know, and then you think, I don't know what this means. And I guess I'm lazy. I didn't really like dig into this. I tried to figure it out on my own. I should have used prayer instead of looking on my own, but God had showed me, I saw Netanyahu and those guys, and they were marching and they were singing this war song that they were going to go to war, and they were finally going to get this war that they'd wanted for a long time to get rid of their enemy. And they were singing this song, and they were in the mountains of Israel. And I've seen this place twice before. Once I had a dream I was with Pastor Patrick and Stephen Ben Danoon, and we were digging in this stuff, and it almost looked like chalk in the mountains of Israel. And we were digging with these triangle-shaped hoes, and there was a long hoe, and Pastor Patrick was ahead of me. He had dug quite a bit further. And Jesus was in front of me, and I looked up, and I was like, Lord, I'm so thirsty. Can we get some water? I'm just so thirsty. And he said, there's no time. You must hurry. You know, I said, can't we get some water? And Steve Danoon was over to the left, way over to the side. You could barely see. He looked like about that big in the distance, and I knew it was him, though. And we were all digging in this, and the Lord was saying, there isn't much time. There isn't much light left for the harvest. And so I saw that same spot with this white dirt, and Netanyahu and those leaders were marching, and they were singing this song about the destruction of their enemies, and they were singing in Hebrew, but I could understand it somehow in English, and they were going to destroy their enemies. And then I saw a cemetery, and I heard the words, the death of the temple, of the death of the royal mount. And then I saw the number, the street number on the cemetery, and I saw graves. Right? And I saw the number, and I woke up, and I was like, I can't remember the rest of the dream. I have notes. I kept notes, and I also made a video about this. But I wake up, I write that down, right? That number. And that number goes to the release number for a guy named Gilead Shalit. The Jews this kid had been captured. He was a soldier. And he had a release number, right? You can type it in, and there it is, and you can find it, and it goes to an Israeli release number for this kid, right? He was like 20 or 21 years old. And when they released him, they released, in exchange for Gilead, Israel gave 1,000 Palestinian terrorist-type individuals, people that had stabbed, shot, did stuff. So, that number, that one of the guys that were in it was this Ishmael Hanyu, however you pronounce his name. He's the one that caused this war right now. I've got to go.